Welcome to Evil Done Badly, the worst podcast on the face of the planet. A while ago, back in episode 17, we covered a crazy, scary bitch named Taylor Shabusiness. It is by far the most listened to episode of this podcast ever. Literally multiples of people have heard it. And if you haven't already, you could go back and check it out after you're done listening to this one. And it's taken around 40 episodes or so, and I figure it's time to milk these crazy bitches for all they're worth. So let's cover another one, a sequel perhaps. So, we've got one, and she's over in jolly old Winchester, England. But before we get into this scary psycho bitch, let's pour ourselves a nice tea, hold on to our fabtastic arses, and let's hear the theme song. This episode of Evil Done Badly is brought to you by the wide world of paranormal investigations and ridiculous thrifter groups over on Facebook. They are both getting close to 30,000 members, and they're bloody brilliant. Tell them Dick sent you. Now back to the show. 27-year-old Shaye Groves is a 27-year-old British woman with many facial piercings and tattoos. She's also a huge fan of serial killers and has painted portraits of them all over her apartment. She didn't paint them, she bought them off Etsy, so if that's what you're into, you can go on Etsy and get these things. She's probably not much of a painter herself, but that's not the issue here. Anyway, she's also a sucker for true crime media, and she soaks up as much of it as she can. Now, she soaks up as much true crime entertainment as she can, but I'm pretty sure she's been ignoring this podcast, just like everybody else on the face of the planet. So I think I can reasonably assume here that, well, I had nothing to do with her criminal stuff going on here. Now, unsurprisingly, she had a rough upbringing. She was partially deaf and has a couple of mental conditions. In order to cope with all this stuff, she's developed drug and alcohol problems. And none of this is surprising at all. But what is a bit surprising is her appearance at the time of the incident. She looks like Marilyn Manson's, well, actually scary sister. But it doesn't stop her from attracting male friends. She has a young daughter with a guy, but she's moved on to various other dudes. Now, I'm going to call her some nasty things in the course of this episode, but from what I can tell, she's actually a pretty good mom. So at least there's that. But she's still going to be quite the cunt by the end of this thing. So, it's July of 2022, and she's been seeing this 25-year-old guy named Frankie Fitzgerald off and on since, well, earlier in the year when they met over at the pub, like most British people do. They enjoy Netflix, Parcheesi, reading poetry, and listening to their Liberace records. I don't know if any of that's true, but it's hard to imagine these people not at least enjoying Squid Game together, so. Stranger Things, both great shows. But, what I don't know about their Netflix habits, I do know that they enjoy getting it on from time to time, and they're both very open-minded and into some kinky BDSM stuff. She also has a collection of pointy objects such as knives, ritual daggers, which are much like knives, and battle axes, which are much like heavy knives stuck to sticks. Some of which she likes to incorporate into, well, their lovemaking. So they can get a little freaky, and Shaye even goes as far as to install a CCTV in her room for videotaping their sexual escapades. Now, that's all well and good. None of this is a problem. For consenting adults, do whatever turns you on. I mean, tape it, watch it, pretend to kill each other, whatever. Now, she's a little freaky, and emotionally, she can be a bit possessive of Frankie, and she tries to keep him on a short leash. I mean, apparently he's quite the piece of ass and she wants to hold on to him. So, one of the ways she keeps him there is by editing together their sex tapes into cuts that make it... It makes all the spanking they're doing look like it's not quite consensual. So, she blackmails him with these videos, claiming to expose him for sexual assault if he doesn't abide by her rules. So she's very manipulative. And she's also manipulative with her roommate. Her name is Lauren. And she's manipulative and abusive both mentally and physically. She does this to get whatever she wants, and this includes making her cook for her, making her put on her socks for her, and it gets pretty degrading. And on top of that, she reportedly chased Lauren around with a pair of nail clippers at one point, and she did a little bit of damage. I mean, nail clippers are not the most intimidating thing to chase someone around with, but it goes to show just how unhinged she is. Might have been toenail clippers, they're a bit scarier. One report claims that she also faked cancer to garner sympathy. So nothing's beneath this crazy bitch. She's basically a sneaky little cunt, and she's only going to get worse. Now, for the duration of their courtship, Frankie and Shaye spent most of their time accusing each other of banging their exes behind each other's backs. So they don't exactly have the healthiest relationship ever. No, they do not. But they do like fucking each other. So they stay together when it's convenient, and they get back to their freaky little sexual antics. And on July 17th of 2022, it's business as usual in their bedroom, and Shaye and Frankie, they've embellished their romantic evening with some drugs and alcohol. Frankie is peacefully laying in bed asleep, and Shaye takes it upon herself to poke around in Frankie's phone. Yeah, she scrolls around a bit, and she finds what appears to be a message from a 13-year-old girl of a somewhat flirtatious nature. Now, Shaye here, she's responsible, and she responsibly deals with this situation by grabbing the ritual dagger she had serendipitously placed under her pillow, and she slices poor Frankie's throat with it. He wakes up, he starts gurgling, and she would then proceed to stab him 17 times in the chest. Frankie would not survive the attack, and she would later claim that Frankie was gurgling, and she valiantly tried to stop the bleeding from his neck with her hand, but it didn't work. So she stabbed him in the heart to make it stop. Now, later on they will find out that the girl Frankie was messaging was blocked by Frankie once he found out her age, which, well, Shaye never bothered to clarify with him. Instead of asking him and talking out their differences, she just killed him instead. And as we said earlier, Shaye watches a lot of true crime shows and documentaries, and she has a plan to get away with all this murdering stuff. She's got this encyclopedic knowledge of the true crime cases, and she knows what not to do when committing her crimes, and she fancies herself a little bit smarter than the average folks because, well, she's been a student of true crime, a devotee for so long. Now, I'm not sure I agree with any of that. Listening to true crime stuff does not necessarily make you smarter. For instance, your brain cells are disintegrating right now as you're listening to me babble about this fucking idiot. This show here, it's about true crime, and it's anything but educational. And the person we're talking about here, she's a fucking fucktard. you are not coming out of this episode any smarter than you already were. So, I've been thinking, maybe we should add a disclaimer to every episode that says we can't be held responsible for how dumb you feel after listening to it. So consider yourself warned. I don't need no disclaimer. You can't get sued if there's no listeners. Who's gonna claim that, who's gonna claim they got brain rot from me? They would have to admit they listened to the show, and nobody's doing that. Anyways. So Shaye here, she smartly evades capture by video calling her friend Vicky right after the killing and telling her that she slit Frankie's throat while he was sleeping. She continues talking, and she actually shows her the body, and she can be seen cleaning blood off the things that have blood spattered all over them. Just normal house cleaning stuff that, well, you got a house clean when you got blood all over everything. So she tells Vicky that it's okay because Frankie was probably suicidal anyway. And, well, she's just going to bury him in the backyard and tell everyone they had a fight and he just walked out. You know, logical, stuff like that. People break up, people walk out. Now, she's going to show Vicky the edited videos of Frankie being sexually abusive to kind of gloss over the gravity of what just happened. Now, she says all this, giggling the whole time, and capping off the conversation with something to the effect of, "Hey, Vicky, we're still going to be friends, right?" Yeah, of course, you're still going to be friends. Naturally, Vicky thinks it's all a sick joke at first, because, well, Groves, she's a fucking weirdo, and nobody would put anything past her. Now, once Groves zooms in, and it's obvious that Frankie's throat is actually deeply slashed and he is dead, Vicky knows, holy crap, this shit just got real. Now Vicky gets a chance to prove how good of a friend she is, and she gets to prove that she no longer wishes to be Shaye's friend anymore by just calling the police and telling them to go to her house and see what the fuck is going on. So the police show up, and they say, "Well, what's all this about then?" And all they can smell bursting out through the front door is the smell of bleach. So, that's a bit suspicious, isn't it? So, she nonchalantly meets him at the door. She's smoking a cigarette and tells him her place is a terrible mess and they shouldn't come inside. They don't leave and, well, they come in anyway. They quickly realize that this nutjob has actually slit Frankie's throat, just like the girl on the phone just said. And hey, Frankie is very much dead. So basically, Shaye had used her vast wealth of true crime knowledge to kill someone in her own apartment, tell someone that she did it, stay exactly where she was with the body, while waiting for the cops to show up. Not to mention, she also has pictures of serial killers everywhere. Wow, I don't know how you expect to keep that secret. That's, she's a fucking dummy. And it's a good thing she's a fucking dummy, because she's caught now, and Frankie's family don't have to wonder about what happened to him. It's the worst possible outcome, but at least there's some sort of closure. She's a nut job. She's a fucking idiot. Shouldn't have happened, but at least now there will be some justice. Now, the one thing she did do that made some sort of sense was try to paint Frankie as some sort of violent lunatic and that she needed to defend herself. So she would later try and use her crappily edited sex tape to show how depraved and violent Frankie was. Now, he did have a somewhat volatile past, and Groves, well, she tried to play into that. He was formerly convicted of domestic abuse, and he liked hard drugs, so it wasn't that big of a stretch. But as we've said before, this was all voluntary. This was all just them fucking around. He's not to blame in this case. So how did she say it? How did she say that it all went down? Well, she claims when she found the messages from the young girl on his phone, she called him a pedo, and he was awake. And he gets upset. He doesn't want to be called a pedo, and he starts choking her. Okay, that's totally plausible. She claims she reached behind her to grab a lockbox to bonk him on the head with. Okay. Instead, she accidentally grabbed her ceremonial dagger and accidentally, fatally slit his throat with it. Okay, that's not quite as possible. And, well, I think it's safe to say no one's buying this stupid shit. I'm pretty sure the 17 stab wounds after he was bleeding out through the gash in his neck probably makes the self-defense theory a bit of a tough sell. Not to mention the bleach. I mean, people who've just defended themselves from a vicious attacker, they don't need to sterilize their houses or bury the victims in the backyard. So this all looks bad. And she's arrested, and she goes to trial in early 2023. Now back to the sex tapes. The crappily edited stuff she was showing to people earlier, just to smear Frankie, was easily detected as the horseshit that it was. The court, they obtained the original videos, and well, it just made the two of them look like perverts. I mean, that's it. And I mean, they're perverts, but they're law-abiding ones. Frankie was totally reasonable with his BDSM stuff, and, well, she didn't really have to defend herself from anything. And I think, yeah, it's safe to say here that she has basically nothing working for her in her favor. The CCTV footage proved Frankie was just a guy who liked weird sex with knives, and not a rapist. Now, her deliberate, useless attempts to paint Frankie as a rapist just made the whole thing look more planned. Also, the stink of bleach from her house shows, yeah, she was definitely trying to cover something up. Not to mention, the downright brutality of it makes her look absolutely batshit bonkers. She's quite unstable. And her well-documented fascination with morbid serial killer shit is a very bad look too. Regardless, she acts all cocky and cold and remorseless in court. Now, her whole life crumbles before her, and she pretends to be happy about it. And then, on February 17th, the jury hands down a unanimous verdict. Guilty! She's sentenced to death by vermin. Or at least she should be. She gets life in prison with no chance of parole for at least 23 years. Britain is a silly place that won't execute their psychos. They haven't executed anyone since 1964, and it's about time they take another look at that. So there you have it. Shaye Groves is a cunt, and I don't want to talk about her anymore. And that'll about do it. Another lousy episode of the worst true crime podcast ever. Evil Done Badly is in the books. And if you would like to reach out and suggest future episodes that we may get around to covering, we can be reached on Instagram or YouTube at Evil Done Badly, or by email at evildonebadly@gmail.com. Thanks for checking us out. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Dick, and I hope to see you next time. Now, stick around for another bona fide hit song from our friend David Mark Gill. He's just as popular as we are, and this song is called Delicate, and it's about deciding if you want to shoot yourself in the head or not. So it's another feel-good tune, and it's available on streaming everywhere. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Life is a balance. You always teeter on the edge. And at any given moment, you can be wildly misled. You have joy on one side, pain another. You can't have it all, but you can't have another. There's only so much sorrow that your soul can't hold before the scale tips, and then you must let go. You can go either way, you just need a little nudge. Will you go on or give up? You can be the judge. You can revel in your hope, be satisfied if you choose. Sometimes you will win, but either way you will lose. It's all a struggle, you can try to hold on. Sometimes it's not enough, it's your time to move along. Enjoy the little things, they'll make you a believer. Stand wherever you would like, the grass is never greener. You've clung on too tightly, left yourself wide open. You gave yourself away, now you're lost and broken. You can go either way, you just need a little nudge. You can go on or give up, you can be the judge. You can revel in your hope, be satisfied if you choose. Sometimes you will win, but either way you will lose. Hope is nothing, pain is nothing, joy is nothing. You'll never be something. You can go either way, you just need a little nudge. You go on or give up, you can be the judge. You can revel in your hope, be satisfied if you choose. Sometimes you will win, but either way you will lose. Hope is nothing, pain is nothing, joy is nothing. You'll never